Okay, we're on. So my name's Jim McFarland. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and anxiety specialist. I'm a licensed clinical therapist in the state of Georgia. You can look that up if you want to. It's after a long day at work, so I'm going to do my best here. But I wanted to give you some real guidance when it comes to anxiety. I went on and looked up anxiety on YouTube, and um, I saw all these little tiny short videos, and I get it. People have short attention spans, but nobody is doing any kind of real, um, any kind of real depth kind of help for this. And so this is for all the people who maybe you can't get to therapy, it's not in your budget, maybe whatever. Maybe you can't find, maybe your therapist doesn't work with anxiety. Um, and so forth. So this is going to be for you. So we're going to start from ground one, ground zero. So let me give you just a little bit of background. So I experienced anxiety all through my life, beginning of my life from uh, gosh, young age, maybe 7 years old, started experiencing anxiety. I can remember having feelings of unreality, derealization, it's called, derealization, where you just don't feel like everything is real because of anxiety. And I started experiencing that. I had anxiety symptoms on and off. I experienced a lot of social anxiety through middle school and then on in high school. And then finally, it really hit me big when I was in college, and it really just reshaped my life, is what it did. Now, some beautiful changes came out of anxiety, and I wouldn't take it back. There are amazing things that happened in my life because of it, but I wish I would have had like some real answers and some real help. So later on, after I had anxiety and kind of went through it, it actually pulled me out of school. I left school, stopped school because of it, and then had to grovel my way and just kind of learn and how to put all this together into a coherent method on how to actually work with anxiety. And I'm just going to tell you what most therapists are telling you out of the gate is not going to help with anxiety. I just tell you that flat out. It's just not. They're not telling you what'll work. It's not because they mean to not give you the accurate information. It's because they don't know any better. So I'm an anxiety specialist. I spent the last 15 years of my life just specializing in anxiety. Um, and it's a really kind of a special field. It requires very special tools to get over anxiety and to put anxiety in the back seat. Now, I'm going to just make a caveat. What this is directed to, this will apply to all kinds of anxiety. What types of anxiety? Well, let's say you're a chronic worrier. Chronic worrier, you can't stop worrying, and worries just inundate you, and you're afraid you're going to go crazy because you have so many worries. You worry about this, worry about that, worry about your spouse and maybe your children and maybe finances and medical issues, and so chronic worry. Also, right alongside that would be OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So that would be like getting obsessive thoughts or worry thoughts that come in that are really sticky. Oh my gosh, what am I going to throw the baby? Am I going to throw the baby out the window? Am I going to uh, am I going to hurt somebody? Am I going to harm somebody? I have a fear of contaminating myself maybe and then contaminating other people. That's how a lot of times that'll show up. The point of it is there's lots of different kinds of anxiety. There's also illness anxiety. I get really scared that I'm ill and that I'm going to get a sickness, that I have a brain tumor, that I have cancer, that my heart is going nutty, and I'm going to have a stroke and stroke out or have a heart attack. Other types of anxiety would be derealization, depersonalization. That can be a class all by itself. That's kind of what I had, mixed together with some OCD, mixed together with some panic disorder. So there's a lot of overlap in all of these. It's very, very hard to kind of tease apart unless you have a really good therapist, really good clinician, really working closely with you to really tease apart what exactly you have. But here's the good news. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. To really get the answer to this. So what we'll do in this first video is going to be about 20 minutes. So I'm going to make this about 20 minutes long, and we're going to go into, I'm going to start from the ground up, what anxiety is about, and what causes it. And I'm just doing this because I want to kind of educate you and kind of bring you into the fold and bring you up to speed with what actually works to help anxiety, because there's so much misinformation out there. There's people teaching breathing techniques. There's people teaching, oh, you've got to ground yourself. They'll teach you that. And not to decry any of those are fine. They work good for some mild levels of anxiety. But for any of you that have chronic anxiety or really hard hitting anxiety, or maybe get panic attacks, or maybe you have OCD, or maybe you have chronic worry. These things do not help. They don't even put a dent in it. It's like putting a thimble full of water on a forest fire. So you need some very specialized tools to deal with that and to work with it and to get yourself out of that. So hopefully that's what this is going to give you. Hopefully that's what these videos are going to give you. That would be my goal with this, is just to kind of give you as much as I possibly can in a small chunk of time, to help you to conquer these conditions and kind of get rid of them, to get rid of your anxiety. So, so different kinds of anxiety. So you've got the generalized kind, you got worry, you've got all of the different kinds of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. You've got sickness anxiety. You've got panic disorder and different forms of panic disorder and agoraphobia, where you start to avoid the things that are causing physical symptoms and overwhelming sensations in your body and in your brain. You've got another kind of anxiety would be the illness anxiety, kind of being scared of that. Social anxiety, that's another one. Now, here's what's cool. Again, all you need is a blanket set of principles, and then you need some real know-how on how to apply these blanket principles to each one of these conditions. But the general principles will still apply to all of these to get rid of them, to begin making them better. So let's talk about where anxiety comes from. Let's start there. That would be a good thing. So what is it? What is it? And that's a classic. If you get panic attacks and you get overwhelming sensations in your body, you probably feel like, oh my God, I don't know where this is coming from. Where is this from? How is this happening? What is causing this? It came out of nowhere. That's something that I always hear from my clients. It comes out of nowhere. No. We're going to start out with the premise that all anxiety is caused. All anxiety is caused. It doesn't matter what type of anxiety you have, it's caused. And then it is also maintained. So all anxiety is caused. All anxiety is maintained. Maintained by what? Well, maintained by certain actions that we habitually do without knowing it that make the anxiety worse. And we'll get into that maybe in other videos. But without knowing it, all anxiety kind of traps you. It kind of traps you, and it traps you in a vicious cycle. And kind of the general way this works is I start to feel anxiety, and that can come from a number of different places. When I start to feel it, I start to feel anxious, right? It could be I have a certain thought in my head that makes me feel anxious. Could be I start to fear I have a certain illness, or maybe somebody close to me has an illness. Could be I start to worry about my kids, and now I start to feel anxiety, or my loved one, or my relationship, or it could be I start to get into social situations and I start to feel a little bit of anxiety. So now you get that anxiety response ramping up. Okay, so now that anxiety response then ramps up in the body and the brain, and we start to get physical symptoms from that. So we start to get physical, mental, and emotional symptoms from it. So you can break it down into three pieces, three parts. So what are the physical symptoms? I could go on and on with those. I mean, they range from everything from pain to feeling off balance to shortness of breath to feeling my heart pound and skip beats, to tingling, what we call paresthesia, which is feeling tingling in your extremities and so forth, blurred vision, feeling faint, feeling like I'm going to fall over, vasovagal response, feeling differences in sounds and how sounds, things feeling like they're unreal, like things aren't real in front of me, pain, aches and pains, tension in the shoulders, feelings of pressure in the head or in the brain. I feel like my brain is hurting. I feel like my brain is on fire. I feel like nerves are maybe on fire. Maybe a feeling of hollowness, maybe a feeling of not being inside your own body. Those would be all of the physical symptoms, and there's so many of these. No joke, I could probably there's probably 150 to 300 of them. And here's the most bewildering part, is that they can change form from one anxiety condition to another, and even inside the same anxiety condition. Let's say somebody has panic disorder and gets panic attacks or gets physical sensations that they don't like. Those sensations can change day to day and keep you really kind of confused and upset and scared. And so that's kind of the physical part of anxiety. What about the mental part? What does it do with our thoughts? Well, it starts us worrying. Oh my gosh, what's happening inside of me? Oh my gosh, what's happening with my kids? Oh my gosh, maybe I have some. It usually has some form of what if or oh my gosh, you know. And so OMG X. So that's how kind of the thought process goes. And then it goes on to worry about, what if I get one of these at work? What if I start having this in front of my boss? What if my, what if I start having this and experiencing, what if this never goes away? What if I get trapped by this? What if? So then that would be like the kind of the flavor of the mental component, the thoughts that are, and both of these, both the sensations in the body, all the different sensations that we can feel, and then also the thoughts are some of the maintaining factors that just maintain this condition and keep it in place. What about the emotional component, the third one? And any one of these can take precedence at any time. Any one can be the top tier, the top part of the triangle. It can switch. So at one point it may be physical symptoms, and another maybe you're really obsessive and really worried and can't get out of the worries and trapped with the worries. Other points you may be trapped with emotions. The emotions can be terror, and some people are reluctant to call it fear. I'm afraid of. No, I'm not afraid of it. I'm just uncomfortable with it. You're afraid. I just don't like to go to parties. Yeah, you got some fear, some social anxiety. And so then one of the things that I help people do is just to kind of cut through all of that and get to what actually is happening. Now, why does it initially get going? So we started out with the premise that all anxiety is caused. And then if you keep having anxiety, it's being maintained by something or a set of things that you're doing or maybe not doing. Okay, so that's what keeps the whole thing in place. That's what gels this thing in place. So then, and what I'll do is maybe I'll take separate videos and talk about each one of these anxiety conditions and kind of narrow in on them. And then some strategies that are going to help with this, that are going to help with each one of them, some general principles you want to keep in mind, what you want to be asking your therapist for, or if they're helping you with the anxiety, they need to be doing certain things. And if they're not doing them, they're not doing correct anxiety treatment. It's just that simple. If they're not doing these things, they are not doing correct and legitimate anxiety therapy or anxiety help, anxiety intervention. And I'll just say this really clearly. Anxiety therapy is not about grounding. Doing anxiety intervention and real anxiety treatment is not about deep breathing. It is not about that. It is not about anything that we could do to just cope with the anxiety we feel. All of those things are just, everything from vitamins to, and the list goes on. You can look right on YouTube. Right, I guess it would be over there. Look over there, and you'll see just video after video after video of this vitamin is going to help. This meditation and mindfulness thing is going to help. This herb is going to help. This whatever it is going to help you to take away this anxiety. Well, now, just right from the get-go, right out of the gate, those strategies are faulted and flawed and will trap you further in it just by virtue of what they're saying. What are they saying? I want to get rid of my anxiety. And of course, that's very natural for anyone to want to get rid of what they're feeling with this. This stinks. This sucks going through this. So it makes sense that I would come to somebody and say, or say to somebody, I want to get rid of this. Cool. Now, but it turns out how you get rid of it is not how you think you would get rid of it. In fact, for most people that have these conditions, how you get rid of this and how you make this go away and how you make this diminish in your life is not the way you would think. I'm going to leave that at that. You can follow, just kind of watch these other videos as I put them up, and you're going to get the idea from this. But so the anxiety response basically gets started in the body, and it comes from a part of the brain. So for those of you that are hungering for an explanation of why you feel anxious, here it is. Here's why you feel this way. And again, we're going to predicate this on everything that people have been telling you to take anxiety away and out of your life. It's just patent. Sorry, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. I've been studying this thing for years, decades. I've been training under the top people in the world, the top clinicians and researchers in anxiety, from Harvard and Princeton and the University of North Carolina, the UNC, and so forth, all over the country and even all over the world. And the way that you work with anxiety and get rid of it is not by doing breathing exercises, doing mindfulness, grounding, doing sensory exercises, doing yoga, doing taking some type of anti-anxiety medicine. Now those are helpful. I'll put a caveat there. Anti-anxiety medicines are helpful, but they aren't the full treatment. They aren't the full get-go. And most people, honestly, are just trying to rely on medicines to get rid of this. They go to the doctor. Hey, doc, I feel anxious. I'm freaking out. I'm really worrying. What can I do about it? And then you usually get an antidepressant and you get an anti-anxiety medicine. But that isn't the cure. That isn't the way to really get out of these things. That isn't the way to make these start to really diminish and really get a handle on it. To really get a handle on these and really make them go away, you really need to use a whole nother set of principles. You have to really start changing your mind with how you see things, and you have to really look in a place that you aren't looking to get rid of this. So I'll just say that. And again, I've worked with thousands, hundreds and hundreds of clients. I've got a full caseload right now of clients that are in the Georgia area. I'm not taking any new clients, so I want to try to help. And I know that I would have given anything to hear this right here. I would have given anything to hear like an actual explanation of what is going on, what's happening. When I was in college and started to suffer with all of the heavy-duty anxiety symptoms and anxiety thoughts and feelings of unreality and so forth, I wanted to know, like, how do you, like, what, number one, what is happening? Number two, how do you get rid of it? How do you make this stop? Because this is like, it's like a runaway train that was just kind of drilling me into the ground. So it took many, many years to come to a real set of progressive realizations on how to beat this, and then eventually get rid of it in myself, and then start helping other people do that too. So, and there's nothing magical about it. There's a very set way. There's a very definitive pathway to get out of this. It's very logical. It makes a lot of sense once you understand it. It makes perfect sense. But I can tell you your solution is not in all of the other things people have been trying to sell you or tell you. Even well-meaning therapists that say, well, you need to do, we need to go back through your childhood. Certainly if you have childhood trauma or you have some type of post-traumatic stress disorder, that would be the one that I would say maybe is a little different. With post-traumatic stress disorder, you have to, it's really necessary to heal the trauma that caused it. So if you're a first responder, if you're a victim of a crime or some type of heinous or serious physical, sexual, or mental abuse, then those types of anxiety actually have as their key. All the principles still apply that will get you out of it. It's not going to lie in grounding and doing yoga and mindfulness, and those are all good, but it's not gonna lie there. Your solution won't lie there. So there's a particular set of things in trauma treatment that you would use to address those particular issues, that you would use to address those particular post-traumatic stress disorder issues. But the general guiding principles are the same, and they work across the board on all anxiety conditions without exception. And that's what's beautiful about it. It's like the unified field theory, like the granddaddy theory and way that you get out of anxiety disorders and make them better. So let's talk for a minute about where anxieties come from, then one in this video. And then I'm going to just put one of these up, like 1 or 2 a week. I just keep putting them up. I'm putting them up just so people can find out how to really work with this. And if your therapist or your professionals or your doctor or whomever is not doing these things, then they are not giving you legitimate, good, solid anxiety treatment. They need to be doing these things. Just that simple. There's no getting around it. There's no, well, is there another way? Nope. It's very simple. Anxiety works in a very simple way. The way to get out of it is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And there is a way to turn that anxiety switch off in your brain, to rewire the brain, to rewire it so that you're not experiencing all these horrendous, awful symptoms and, getting panic attacks at night and can't sleep and, getting nauseated and feel freaked out and having panic attacks and so forth. So, okay, so now all anxiety is caused, all anxiety is maintained. We're going to start out with those two premises. Now, what is causing it exactly? Let's look at that. Okay, so if I take that bracelet off, if this is the human brain, by the way, this is borrowed from a particular person. This is Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain, and he teaches us. It's a great way to show the brain. If this is the human brain, this would be my brow bone right here. This would be the front part of my brain right up here in the front part of my cortex. On the side, you can see the ear. Here would be my spinal cord all the way down the back. Here at the bottom, at the base of the brain, right back here is the brain stem. So we're going to push it this way. You can see it from the top too. From the top, you can see all these folds in the brain. That would be the gray matter in the brain, the outermost layer of the brain. So there it is, the outermost layer of the brain. Now, the outermost layer of the brain, that was the last part of the brain that evolved. So it was the last final part, and it is the most complex part of the brain. Now, there's other parts of the brain that really have to do with the ignition of anxiety, and even there are some parts of this outer cortex that have to do with worry and so forth. We'll get into those maybe in another video, but in general, anxiety isn't coming from this part of your brain. It's just not. It's not coming from this. It's not coming from, and by the way, in humanoids and in hominids, this is a very thick part of the brain, super thick. And if you look compared with apes are thinner, and then other mammals are even thinner. So we have the biggest one. We have the biggest, thickest. And so this part of the brain is responsible for like language, goal setting, creativity, problem solving, list making, rational decision making, all of the higher order things that make humans humans. So all of that language, this is all in this outer part of this brain, this very thick cortex here. So now we've got all of these. These are things that we're normally aware of. We're aware of our ability to speak. We form words. We figure out what words we want to use and then talk. It's coming from here. We problem solve and balance a checkbook. If you look at your bank account now and you see if your balance is right. Okay, we do that with this part of our brain. We problem solve things at work and so forth. We learn, we have memory and so forth, and it's built into this part of the brain. Anxiety is not coming from this part. Here's where anxiety is coming from. We lift that top of the brain off, and now you can see these other structures in here. And what's interesting is this is the most primitive part of the brain, right here, right in the back of my head, this brain stem. This brain stem is really generating the entire anxiety response pretty much, along with this middle set of structures. There's actually two of these. If I could put two thumbs in there, if I had two opposable thumbs on either side of my palm, that would be the main structures inside the brain that are causing the anxiety. So what are those structures? Well, the tip of my thumb, we would call that the amygdala. The amygdala just comes from a Latin word meaning almond, and you have two of them. There's two little almond-shaped alarm centers. You can call it the oh shit center. Holy crap center. There it is. So you got two of them. You got two of those. And those are actually tied into another part of the brain that's very important in anxiety called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus really is the part of the brain that has emotional memory. It really encodes emotional memory and remembers things in an emotional way. Maybe you, as an anxious person, you've experienced that you just wake up and you feel bad. Why do I feel bad in the morning? Well, there's an emotional memory attached to other mornings and so forth. And there's even a physiological buildup throughout the night that we have a real name for that causes anxiety to happen in the morning. That's why tons of people experience the pit in their stomach in the morning, and I don't want to get out of bed, and I don't want to face this again. Is this going to be another bad day? Um, all of that is caused by these two amygdala, these two thumb structures here, and then two hippocampuses, two of these right here. And they tag right into they sit right next to the amygdala. And you can see this whole structure is even tied right into this part of the brain, this brain stem right back here. So it's the part that sits right on top of the spinal cord. And it's super primitive, super primitive. Brainstem, what it does is it's in charge of heartbeat and breathing rate and sweating and digestion, whether your digestion is going on, blood pressure, all of these kinds of things. This is the lower part of the brain. This is the lower, more primitive, not lesser, but lower in the brain structures. These also, so good name for all of these, everything kind of below this line right here, below the line is, those would be all of the, and it's kind of shaped like a triangle, like an upside down triangle or upside down pyramid. All of those are like, it's like an iceberg. That would be the subconscious. Literally sub, below, conscious, awareness, below awareness. It's things that are outside of our awareness is actually controlling our anxiety. And this was revolutionary for me to really figure this out. I kind of knew they were coming not from me, like I wasn't choosing them, but what was choosing them? What was doing this? Well, these subconscious structures, these primitive brain structures, also called the limbic brain, also called the mammalian brain. These structures, along with the most primitive parts of the brain, the reptilian brain, which was here, that's what caused these. That's what causes these. So once those get cranking, those signal down the spinal cord, all the way down your spinal cord, out into different nerve plexus that go to your heart and your lungs and out to your digestion and your stomach and your intestines and bladder and so forth, your groin, all your legs. All of these are wired in to this part here and these two parts, these two amygdala here. So when those fire, when those detect danger or what they perceive as danger, they then signal down through the hypothalamus, down into the brainstem. Brainstem goes down through the spinal cord, out into these nerve plexes, and it signals to all of these other systems in the body to start re-gearing and get ready for danger. And that would be the pit in your stomach you feel, and the heart skipping beats, and the shortness of breath, and I feel like I can't get a breath. Whew. That's what's making that happen. And all of the other sensations of anxiety. And interestingly, it also signals out and also kind of puts out these nerve plexes right to the two adrenal glands that sit right up on top of the kidneys. And those adrenal glands, once they get the signal to pump out adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, all of the different stress hormones. Those are now coursing in your bloodstream. We know that the amygdala reacts within thousandths of a second. That's how fast it is. It is impeccable in its response. It is instantaneous, beyond instantaneous, faster than a second. So thousandths of a second, it will react. And if it thinks or perceives what it considers as a threat, it will turn on this stress response. And that stress response is what people are normally calling the fight or flight, right? And there's different degrees of fight or flight. We could call it fight or flights, many different degrees of it, from the lowest of the low, like a thermometer, a little bit of tinge, a little bit of, a little bit of weird, I feel a little bit off, all the way up to full-blown DEFCON 5 panic. All of those, right? And the brain can modulate those and change them at will, at whatever it needs or whatever it thinks it needs. This is where it's coming from. Your anxiety is coming from this part of your brain, these primitive limbic structures here of the brain, not the cortex. So that's what's driving it. Now, what you need is, what are the keys to unlock this, to make these little amygdala start doing what I want them to do rather than what it wants to do? And what are the keys that can make this hypothalamus not program me for and condition me for all of these fear responses to everything? What can I do to overwrite that? And how can I get control of that process to where now I can start to overwrite this with new memories and new conditioning? And so all anxiety is conditioned. It's made. It has a cause. It is maintained, and then it is conditioned into the body and into the brain wiring. So what we're really looking at is, how do you rewire the brain? How do you do that? How do you make that happen? And that's what we'll start to talk about maybe in the next video. So hopefully this was enjoyable to you. Hopefully this was, if you want, you can go over to Jim McFarland, jimmcfarlandtherapy.com. You can check out my website there. I will continue to put these up. I'm just going to continue to put these up. And we're going to give you the keys to how to deal with your own anxiety and what to do to stop it. What to do to put anxiety back in its place and to rewire your brain so it's not an issue anymore. So it's not an issue. And this is something that I work with clients all day long. I speak this stuff all day long and work it all day long. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people get over their anxiety. And so, yeah, it's a delight to be here and a privilege to be here. And so, yeah, we'll see you in the next video.